Hi, it's Fabrizio Poli. Welcome to another episode of Quantum Action, and today we're going to be focusing on the letter of the word action, the T for tuition. Yeah, as you know, those of you that haven't been here before, quantum action, quantum meaning, exponential growth, meaning going from 1 to 100 or 1 to 5,000. How do you make that quantum jump? Well, as I often say, sometimes we go and we attend all these seminars, we read all these self-help books, but we're still not managing to make that breakthrough. What's stopping us? There is something stopping us, and sometimes it's something invisible. So I came up with the concept of the action cube. If you haven't seen the introductory video, just click on the link above and it will take you there, explain the different sides of the cube. But one side of the cube, there's a letter for each side of the cube spelling the word action, and the one we're focusing on today is tuition. So we're going to be talking about this book here written by Peter Gray called Free to Learn, a different approach to education. Most of you haven't seen before, so we'll be talking about that. But before we get into it, I'd encourage you to subscribe to Quantum Action. Give us a thumbs up, comment below. Let's get the word out there about Quantum Action. Let's get more people really tapping into who they really are, bringing out their real self and embracing their talents that God gave them, and let them go out there and have the success that they were designed for. Now, this does not mean that everybody's designed to be a billionaire or climb Mount Everest or win the next season of X Factor. It means about embracing the greatness that you have within and tapping into who you are so that you can take quantum action and make that quantum leap in your life. So anyway, enough from the intro here. So let's get straight into quantum action. Off we go. Fabrizio Poli here to talk about this book here, Free to Learn. Very interesting book written by Peter Gray. I'll tell you what it's about. Before we do go into this, just want to let you know, I'm married with 4 children, and our oldest is 19 and our youngest is 12. And our children have never been to school. Now, I was introduced to homeschooling just under 19 years ago, when Silvia and I had our first child, which is Benjamin, our oldest son. And we soon noticed that he was very bright. And so we started to think about, okay, well, what about his education? Where are we going to send him to school? And I thought, well, let's send him to private school. I went to private school. So I thought, well, let's send our children to private school. And my wife came up with this idea of homeschooling. Now, this was back in 2000. And, homeschooling was still, quite a trend, but it wasn't as trendy as it is today, and we didn't have the technology that we have today. Today, it's a lot easier to homeschool your kids. But anyway, I was a bit skeptical in the beginning, and so Silvia said to me, go on the internet, do a bit of a search. And she knows, I'm a researcher. I love reading. I love studying. So off I went, and I surfaced out of my study after about an hour and a half, and I said, yes, we must homeschool our kids. Now, why homeschooling, and what's this book, Free to Learn, about? Now, when you homeschool your children, the first thing a lot of people think of doing is taking the school and transporting it into their home. And they either homeschool their kids themselves, maybe the parents have got a university level education, or they're good at teaching, so they can teach their children. So some people use that approach. Other people hire tutors to come and teach their kids English and Japanese and maths and science and stuff like that. It's another way of doing it. And we've tried all different systems, and there isn't one correct system. I would say a lot of it depends on your children. And let's just talk about the schooling system in general. And this is one of the things it talks about here in Free to Learn. It mentions that, for example, and they've done an experiment where they take a child that's in a hunter-gatherer society and a child that's accustomed to going to school, and they want them to learn something new. And what they discovered is that the child that's used to going to school sits there and waits for someone to come along to teach them how to use whatever they have to use or whatnot. And they did an experiment in India where they took a computer into one of these hunter-gatherer communities, and they put it there, and they just left it, and they watched the children with the cameras for a number of days. And they soon saw that these children learnt to use the computer on their own, and they started doing stuff with the computer. And it was quite interesting, without anybody teaching them anything. So this is interesting. And some of these kids didn't even know how to read or write. but they started playing around, experimenting. And so what the approach is in this book, which is we have to go back to the hunter-gatherer way of educating our children, because one of the two flaws of the schooling system is, number one, it destroys creativity, and number two, it destroys confidence. So these are two aspects which, in the real business world, in the adult world that we all live in, the two things that are going to really determine if you're going to be successful or not. You've got to be confident in what you're doing, and you've got to be creative. Because today we're bombarded with information. There's a lot more competition out there, so it's a lot more difficult to stay ahead of the competition. And so the thing that will keep you ahead is that confidence that you know what you're doing, but you're continuously learning, you're continuously reinventing yourself, you're being creative. And that's really important. The schooling system was basically designed to produce, factory workers, and then, soldiers, people that think in the same way. I mean, you think of, for example, when you go to school, you put, all kids of 8 years old are in the class with kids that are 8 years old. You don't put an 8-year-old in the school in a class with a 15-year-old. Well, in here, they talk about this particular school in the United States, and I can't remember the name of it anyway. It mentions it here in this school. And what they do in this school is you sign your kids up, and they're not appointed to a class. You've got kids from like 7 to the age of 18, and they just go into the school, and there's a number of things that they can learn, and there's no set times of classrooms or whatever. They want to learn computing, they go into the computer lab, there's someone there that can help them. If they want to do some exercise, they go into the gym. If they want to learn science, they go into the science lab. And you find these kids start to group with kids from other different ages. And that is very true, because, in the workforce, when you go out and you work for a company or whatever, you are dealing with people from different ages. You're dealing with a 60-year-old, a 21-year-old, 35-year-old, people that are single, people that are married, people that are divorced. You've got all these different scenarios. And you don't have these scenarios when you're in a school or university, where pretty much everybody's the same age. So it's not very realistic. So if you do homeschool your children, first of all, it gives your kids a great advantage. And this is really, really key. And we see it with our kids. Our kids, play and socialize with people from all ages. They don't have a problem speaking to a 77-year-old lady or a 3-year-old kid, because they've been brought up that way. And so they are more ready for the real world. Now, I found this book, Free to Learn, really, really interesting, because the whole concept of the hunter-gatherer and how the hunter-gatherers basically just, let their kids learn through experimentation. They just have a few guidelines, and then they just let them get on with it. And that's really what you need to do, because if, for example, one of your children is a gifted musician, that's what they need to focus on, playing the piano. What's the point in putting them through all these science classes or geography classes or history classes if that's not what they're good at, if that's not where they need to focus? And yes, I understand you need to know a little bit of geography and history and whatnot. But, you can learn that in a few months. You don't need to study the ancient Egyptians 5 times like they do in school, or 3 times, or however many you study the ancient Egyptians. You just need to sit there for a week, study the ancient Egyptians, watch a few documentaries, read a couple of books, and off you go, if that's of interest to you. So, we have to move away, I think. Otherwise, our children are going to be shut in a cube. And when they're shut in the cube, they're easier to control. But who's going to control these people that are out there? And, some people give them a name or whatever. They sort of want to control and stop people from tapping into who they really are. I sincerely believe that each one of us was placed on this planet as spiritual beings having a human experience with a certain number of talents. Now, some people have 5, some people have 20, and the name of the game is for us to figure out what our talents are and then develop those talents. And unfortunately, the schooling system, the traditional schooling system, doesn't do that. And so this is one of the reasons why a lot of parents now turn to homeschooling. Now, of course, there's also the religious element. There's a lot of religious families that don't like what's going on in schools with the way they're teaching, sex, and they're eliminating religion from schools and prayer from schools. They're doing this in a number of countries around the world. Or they're bringing in other religions which, aren't in line with your faith. And this is a bit disturbing to some families. And I'm not, trying to point my finger at anybody here. But, at the end of the day, as parents, I think we are responsible for our children, and farming out the education of our children to the schooling system, which is very much socialist minded And I'm sorry if you're a socialist, but, I'm not. And I don't agree with socialism at all. So there you go. Just created a few enemies and a few dislikes for this video. But, I'm honest. I'm transparent. I'm telling you exactly what I think here. I'm a conservative and I'm also a Christian. So I believe in God and, and Jesus Christ. That's just me. That's my take on it. But I do also think that, if people have other beliefs, you have to respect them. And if people have opinions which are not in line with mine, it's right for them to express their opinions. But as far as my children's education, that really is my responsibility as a parent to educate my children in the best possible way. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should homeschool because, again, it's your responsibility as a parent to educate your children. If you think you want to send your child to, the local school down the road because it's free and whatnot, that's your choice. As far as I'm concerned, we had the option of sending our children to private school. We thought, all the way up to high school, we'll homeschool them, and then we'll see what they want to do next. Now, our oldest son, he's 19. He's at the moment serving a mission for our church. He will be finished in the summer of 2021. And when he finishes, he's going to do a 2-year university degree in filmmaking because that's what he wants to do. That's what he has manifested an interest in and talent for. So, great. That's good for him. And then the others have got their things, but they're all very different. And that's the other advantage of homeschooling. And I found in this book, Free to Learn, it talks about the fact that, by keeping your children home, the parents have more time to get to know their children. And hence, when you have more time to get to know your children, you know how to help them perform at their best and what their interests are. And you can let them focus on those interests and basically embrace who they really are and why they were sent here to earth, what talents they were given and how to develop them. And this is really, really important. So this is really the side of tuition in the queue today. So if you haven't got this book, Free to Learn, you can click on the link below and it'll take you to a link where you can get a copy of this book. And very interesting. If you are a parent, I encourage you to read this book and research the whole homeschooling and unschooling movement. There's a lot of information online so that you can make an informed decision. And I think this is important these days, is making informed decisions and also thinking about what you're reading and what you're seeing and what you're hearing. So same here. Don't believe what I've just told you. I encourage you to go out and do your own research, come to your own conclusions, but I'd love to see what comments you have to say. So let's get the conversation going below this video and let's see what else we can do. And if you haven't subscribed to Quantum Action, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. If you're interested in aviation, business aviation, that's what I do professionally. I'm in business aviation. I fly jets. I manage jets for owners. You can click on the link and go to BizJet TV, my other channel. Otherwise, click on and have a look at the other videos we've got here on Quantum Action. We're talking about the different sides of the cube. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up. That's all from Fabrizio Poli on Quantum Action. And now it's down to you to get out there, take quantum action, and take action now.